Today in our podcast, we're going to hit episode 2 of The School Year is Beginning, how to prepare your kids for it. So have your kids ever had problems in school? Have there been issues with them, getting in trouble at school, or maybe them not wanting to go to school, or them having a lot of negative feelings about school? We're going to dive into how to address those in a way that's really helpful to kind of shift that for your kid to have a more positive school year.
Welcome to the Art of Raising Humans.
Hello, and welcome to The Art of Raising Humans. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Sarah.
And today you're delving into part 2 of preparing your kids for school. Last week, we really went into depth about ways to create routines and goals with your kids to really kind of set a really firm foundation of success for this upcoming school year. So I hope you were able to listen to that one already and are already implementing those tools, because I think we dropped it probably the week your kids going to school. So hopefully you had a chance to have those conversations. But if you didn't, it's never too late to go back and listen to that and go back and do it anyway. And I do want to again just remind you, go to the website, parentinglegacy.com. And when you go there, we have got some great free content. The one in particular I want to highlight is an 8-part series under 30 minutes on how to help you move from fear and shame and kind of change a different approach to discipline with your kid. So I hope you'll grab a hold of that 8-part series. And it comes out each week. Each one's about 3 minutes to 5 minutes long. Sarah and I put a lot of work into that, and I hope you find it really helpful. And free is always great, isn't it? It's always fun. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, but today we want to delve into this content today. Now, in the second part series, we know conflicts arise. So we know sometimes you get into the school year, maybe your kid is not wanting to go. That's a common one I see a lot of kids for, Sarah. Another one is kids are having a really negative experience with teachers or, people at that school. They can't seem to make friends, right? Mm-hmm. So I was in the school district as an elementary school counselor for 7 years. Sarah and I both doing counseling in private practice or with agencies. We've been dealing with kids with school for 15, 20 years of all ages, all the way up to graduating, high school seniors. So there's all types of ways. So we're not going to be able to hit everything, but we hope that we'll highlight some key things that tend to be problems pretty early on in the school year and try to answer some of those questions for you. But there's a disclaimer we want to make.
I just want to, this is just for your run-of-the-mill, so to speak, problems.
Yeah.
Obviously, if your child is having a significant mental health or developmental or, there's this point where these are for problems we can be involved in, but just know that there are times to go get some professional help, some testing, go get those resources.
Yeah.
So that disclaimer.
I would add too, if parents don't know this, but if your kids are also having some learning issues or having problems, schools, especially in public schools, offer a lot of testing for your kids to see if they need an IEP or a 504. And we're not going to delve into all those plans, but those are really great plans to help get your kid extra support. And so when I was an elementary school counselor, that changed a lot of those kids' social situations, because maybe they're really struggling. It was really hurting their self-confidence. And all of a sudden they got tested and they got the support they needed. And then they started to thrive. So, and I really enjoyed a lot of the special ed teachers I worked with were really fantastic about coming alongside kids and just being that extra resource for them. But today I wanted to hit particular, if I can start this conversation with this, is I know if your kid has had issues in the past. I've seen a lot of kids who maybe the previous school year, they didn't want to go to school. And there was a lot of fighting every morning about going to school, or the kid, there was a lot of tension, or the kid was getting in trouble and getting sent home a lot from school. Especially this happens in the early years. And I don't know if our listeners are aware of this, but the most widely expelled age out of all grades combined is pre-K. So more 4-year-olds are kicked out of school than any other age because they're asked to do things they're just not developmentally ready to do. So some kids can sit there and read and write and learn, but kids really need to learn social skills and how to get along and how to have impulse control and all that kind of stuff. So I say all that to say that I think there's a lot of parents maybe listening to this who've had these negative experiences with their kids and they're going into this next school year. But even if you hadn't, I think this is a really great exercise to do. I really would like each and every listener to just take a moment and just imagine what your school experience was like. I think too often we don't reflect upon that. We don't look back and we're not honest with ourselves about how difficult it was to manage school. It's easy to see on TV. I know, Sarah, you were homeschooled and I went to public school. And so sometimes you'll watch these shows about school, like we'll watch Cobra Kai on Netflix or something like that. And you'll be like, is this what school was like? Oh my gosh. Obviously it's a dramatization and hopefully not every school's like that, but some schools are actually like that. kids are actually...
Well, there are lots of times you say, yeah, that happened, or...
Yes, and in many ways, it's even scarier now. It's even harder now. I mean, with all the junk going on in schools, from school shootings that are just so sad and scary, but also just a lot more violence and that kind of stuff. But, when I was going to school, that was there too. There was fighting. I remember one kid slamming another kid in a wall and beating him up in the cafeteria. That kind of stuff happened in like 9th grade. So these kind of things did happen, and it is scary. And it really helps me, Sarah, be able to help kids when I reflect upon that, So I would like parents who are listening to just do that. Be honest about how difficult it can be to successfully navigate school with the peers, with the teachers.
I think those social tiers are really, really hard. Where did you fit in socially? Where did other kids fit in? What was that like for them?
Yeah, and nowadays even more so with academics, Nowadays there's so much. I know 6th graders who are so anxious about whether or not they can get their career by 6th grade. If they fail a class, the teachers are kind of like saying, this is getting you ready for college. And, and there's all this pressure to be successful from so early on. I mean, it's
not just your grades.
Yeah.
It's your entire, what was I involved in? What kind of clubs? How am I building my resume at 11 years old?
Well, and so I know, particularly when I was an elementary school counselor, stories like this kind of helped me, Sarah. So I remember being in 2nd grade, and I had this teacher, Miss Burns. Miss Burns was awesome. And in 2nd grade, I mean, you got to imagine I'm probably like 7 years old. I thought I was going to marry her. Like, I legitimately did. I legitimately thought me and Miss Burns someday we're going to get married. And it was really emotional when halfway through the year, she all first semester had been telling us a story about every weekend. She would come on Monday, hey kids, how was your weekend? And we'd all tell about our weekend. She'd tell these cute stories about her and Mr. Dean hanging out over the weekends. And I thought, oh, this is so cute. Mrs. Burns is teaching us a lesson, some kind of fable, some kind of moral tale about her and Mr. Dean. But then over Christmas, she became Mrs. Dean, and it was like, what is happening? I remember coming back from Christmas in 2nd grade and just being so like blown away that this person was real and that he stole my future wife from me. And so that kind of thinking helped me get into the mind of 2nd graders when I would try to talk to them about things. Another one was in 3rd grade. I had a guy with a robotic arm. My teacher had a robotic arm. His arm had been crushed in some kind of accident. And I remember there was a day in particular that was quite traumatic for me, where me and my friends all came to school that day, and he asked us if we had done our homework that evening. And I hadn't. I don't know why I hadn't done homework, but several of my friends had neither. So I was like, cool, we're all in the same boat. And then he called out those other friends. He didn't say me. He wanted them all to come in at recess and do that homework. And so I was like, cool, I got off. That's awesome. But apparently he just forgot to call my name because and then I saw those friends out there playing at recess. And so when we came in, I was like, wow, they're going to get in trouble. And then when I came in, he pushed me against the wall and then pushed the other kids against the wall. And he said, you're all getting spankings. You're all getting swats. And so he took us to the principal's office, and with his robotic arm and like it was like a ping pong paddle, and he was going to give us all 3 swats for not. And I was like, what is going on? It was so traumatic. I mean, he was a nice guy. I loved that teacher, but that moment was quite strange. And then one more that really helps me with like middle school, high school kids, had a science teacher in 7th grade. And I'd always done well in school, Sarah. I'd always made straight A's all through elementary school. Even 6th grade wasn't that difficult, but I had her science class and she just was mean. She was a really mean science teacher. And my parents, thank goodness, were really open-handed about it. They had some interactions with her, and they just said to me, Kyle, listen, we don't care what grade you get in that class. Just get out of it, So I think I got a D in that science class. And I almost thought, I'm never going to like science again. Now, thank goodness, in 8th grade, had a fantastic teacher named Mr. Burks, and he was so funny. He made science so fun. So in reflecting upon those kind of stories, there's many more that I have with many other great teachers and some other teachers that were just terrifying. So many great, it helps me then empathize when kids just feel like they can't succeed in a class, or when kids have these crazy ideas like they're going to marry their teacher someday. And it helps me go, wow, oh, that makes sense why it was hard for me that whole week after Christmas break to be successful in 2nd grade, because I'm thinking these thoughts. So I would like it would be great for before your kids go into the school year this year, to really think about the school year the kids are in. And what was your school year like? What were some of the challenges you had? And maybe share some of those with your kids, because I think the kids would really love to know that it just wasn't all easy for you either. It wasn't all just, a bed of roses, that there were challenges, and maybe even you have some wisdom to share about how you overcame those. And it could be a really cool way to co-create that year. So I hope that's just a helpful exercise. It really helps me move into empathy with the kids. Anything you do, Sarah, similar to that at all?
I was already thinking about the next thing.
Oh, were you?
But
Okay.
No. I think any opportunity to connect with my child, especially when I know they've had a rough time before. So we're talking, this is the beginning of the year. So this is where everyone's getting a little nervous.
Yep.
And we're really hoping that last year isn't repeated. But
Yep.
we're kind of thinking, well, things didn't change, so it's probably going to be repeated.
Yes,
And
yeah.
we're, if you're anxious about it, your child's anxious about it. And I think getting in that space of empathy
Yeah.
and connecting with them helps to give the opportunity for something to be different, because I've
Yeah.
connected with you, I've empathized with you, and now we can take a step forward versus me just, now it's time to change, this is what's going to happen, and staying in that anxious place. It can bring some calm to it.
Yeah. So one of the questions that comes up a lot with people who listen to the podcast or people we just run into or clients we have is, do I have a conversation with the kids' teachers about the issues they had the previous year? That's a real common dilemma. And you know what, Sarah? It'd be great if that answer was just yes or no.
I know, right? Because you're thinking, okay, if I talk to the teacher,
Yes.
then they're going to know my kid had problems, and
know.
then they're going to see him that way.
Yes.
But if I
And-
don't
and-
prepare
yeah,
them,
yeah.
then they'll be surprised.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really tough one of which way to go. So, having been in the school system,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's where typically when parents come with that question, Sarah, it just really depends. It all depends. I typically would like the parent to really kind of go with their heart on that. I think sometimes, more often than not, I lean on the side of information. So I believe telling them and preparing them is probably going to endear you to them better,
Then surprise,
Teachers,
my child.
teachers in schools do not like to be surprised. So,
Yeah.
so if I were to, I would err on the side of having positive intent, believing the best in the teacher and the administration, and believing they got into this occupation because they want to help my child. So I would do what I could to first probably do that. But I understand when parents don't do that. I understand their trepidation because sometimes they've done it in the past and it did kind of stereotype their kid or kind of is
Give
the word.
them a label.
Yeah, label them or like stigmatize them or, whatever that is, right? And so if you're fearful of that, so I know some parents will be like, I don't want to tell them, I want to see how it goes. And I've seen that work great. Sometimes the teacher has no clue. And so you got to kind of go with your heart. But in general, I would say 80% of the time, I say, give them the information. Trust that they want to help your kid. That's what I would
And
do.
I think the information you give them, you let them know maybe what happened. But
Yeah.
I would make sure you let them know this is what I'm going to do and how I'm going to show up and how I'm going to support you, how I'm supporting my child. So it's not just, hey, my child had a real big anxiety issue or a real big behavior problem, was punching all the other kids. Sometimes let them know what happened, but let them know what you're doing about it, how you're going to be there for them and supporting them. And then it gives you, I think it sets a tone.
Yep.
And it gives you an opportunity to feel out the teacher.
Yes.
How is
Yeah,
this
that's
teacher
good.
responding
Yeah.
to this information?
Yeah.
If it's deer in the headlights or if they're, and you get some idea of what this might look like for your child. And then you can go home and prepare your child for that first day
Yeah.
in a better way because you've had that contact with a teacher. I don't know how often you're able to have those meetings
Sure.
ahead of
Yeah.
class starting.
No, I'm with you, and that kind of gets me to my next thought of I do love that if I can, and if you have a good vibe with the teacher, and you think this teacher is going to be a positive influence, then the more I can connect that kid to that teacher before the school year starts, the better.
Early on in the
early
school
on. So
year, at the
typically
least.
there is a time, especially in the elementary years, not the middle school or high school, but where the teacher is preparing the classroom, and sometimes kids can come in on a meet the teacher type time, and the kid could bring the teacher a picture they've drawn, right? Or they can come in and just ingratiate themselves to the teacher, be helpful. Hey, could I help you put your classroom together? Anything I can do. All those kind of ways. The more I can help my kid be connected to that teacher, the more that teacher's likely to see my kid in a positive light and not just think that there's so little to my kid. They'll see there's much more to my kid than just these issues they've had the previous year.
Yeah, and I think it helps the teacher to know if they can see an engaged parent.
Yeah.
It takes some of the pressure off of them.
100%.
They feel like you're creating a
100%.
partnership
Yes.
versus here's this
Yeah.
problem. Go fix it for me.
Love
Let
it.
me know.
Yeah. And I would say that's true for the entire year. Okay. So I would say that this is kind of going into some other questions, but the more I can have my presence felt, and what I mean by that is not in a negative way. I think a lot of people use their presence to intimidate or to scare the teacher or to and I want you to know every human being is naturally a little like cautious about these relationships, especially teachers. Teachers get a lot of negative stuff from parents. And so there's naturally this kind of guardedness to it, So I've got to realize I want the parent teacher to come in. I am for you. I'm just as much for you as I am for my kid. I want my kid to succeed in your classroom, and I want you to succeed in the classroom with my kid. And so the more I can have my presence felt with the teacher in regards to just getting to know that teacher, having positive interactions with that teacher, more I can get to know the school counselor if I believe the school counselor is going to, because I love that when parents came in and talked to me and believed I was there to help their kid. That's exactly why I got into the business, was to help their kid. If I could get to know the principal, all these people, if I can make these connections and just let them know I'm there for them, there to help them. I want my kid to succeed. I want you to succeed with my kid. I even love the idea of something that I would do, with our kids, is if they was having issues at school with friends, I'd want to go to lunch, see if I could go to lunch, not every day, but maybe a couple times a week, and let my kid know I'll be there at lunch. I'm going to meet the other kids that are around the kids. Now, obviously, once again, middle school, high school, you're not doing this, but elementary school, this is a real common thing I saw parents do and encourage them to do to help kind of almost like grease the social wheels, that I could meet the parent, but if the other kids met that parent, they would really like that kid more because that parent is so good at doing that, right? So if you have the social skills and you want to show your kid how those, you just sit down, you talk to the kids, and then you also get to feel which kids you actually don't want your kid hanging around with. Like which kids are like, so you can even kind of guide some of those interactions as you get to know them. But in general, I found the kids looked at your kid in a more positive light because they met you and they had a positive experience with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a book for really little kids, Wimberly Worried, and it's about this little bunny, and she's a very, very anxious bunny. Just in life in general, she's very anxious, and in the story she goes and she makes a connection. They find another little bunny who's also has similarities, and they're able to help her by joining her with this other bunny friend. And I think that reminds me of what you were just saying.
Yes.
At whatever level, if you're there and you're present, you're more likely to help your child find a good connection, something that's going to help them, because you're there and you're seeing the other kids and you're involved, and the teacher is going to come alongside and look for that as well. Yeah. There's more people there to find pathways of success for your child.
Well, this is a question now for all ages, and so I think you can help me with this, Sarah. How do you help a kid reset themselves, reset if they've had a negative year the previous year? Mm-hmm. And they're going into it, and maybe they're at the same school, and a lot of the same kids, and a lot of the same. How do you help them reset? Because I find a lot of the kids get really a fixed mindset. They get really kind of closed and just assume because last year was bad, this next year is going to be bad too. So they go in already hyper vigilant about all the negativity, and they're not. Even though there might be a lot of positive things going on, they're not even able to see it. So how would you suggest helping a kid reset that?
No, I think that does kind of go back to our last podcast. Mm-hmm. I'd want to start by creating this fun conversation, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to do something that my kid enjoys doing, and I'm going to open the door to have the conversation. And I do want to say sometimes I would voice that even if my child didn't say it. I'd say, sometimes if we've had a bad year or a bad experience, we think that means the next experience is going to be bad as well.
Yeah, it's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah. And that's true because our brains are even wired that way.
Yes.
I saw a bear and this is what happened. So now I know to avoid bears.
It's a sign of intelligence.
Yes,
it'd be dumb if you had a really bad experience. And the next one's going to be great.
Yeah.
You're naturally
going
to
to
be.
Hot stove and it won't burn me this time, even though it burned me last time. So kids could, and so to speak, been burned at school, had this bad experience, and they think, okay, well, going into this very building, their brain starts to go, I remember this building. This stuff happens when I'm in this building. It's negative. So I would want to let them know. I would call that to light and just say, sometimes we feel that way, but just because it happened then, in this case, doesn't mean it'll happen again.
Yeah.
But it would be an opportunity, depending on where your child's at with, if they're willing to have the conversation. Maybe what led to that? What can we try different? Let's try some new things. So if we, again, what's our goal for the year? What's the goal? And let's find some new pathways. We didn't really like those pathways last year. They didn't really work out. So let's find some new ones and start giving that hope, building that hope inside of them that it can be different, can have a different outcome. What would you say?
I might even think what I do with a kid like that too is just, especially an older kid, are you even open to the idea that this next year could be different? I mean, do you believe, and I might even just in a joking way, just can you see the future? Because that's amazing. What else? Tell me who's going to win the Super Bowl, because I want to put some money on that, right? And just like, so let's all agree real quick that we can't see the future, okay? Now, you can predict it by previous information you've had, and maybe even predict it to a high level of success, but are you open to the fact that anything could be good this year? Yeah. And typically a kid's honest enough to say, yeah, something might be good. Okay, well, let's look for that. How about we look for that? Because I think what you focus on will grow. So if you want to see bad stuff this year, I think you're going to find a lot of it. I bet every day if we wanted to talk about it, how about we even do that for a week? You come home, tell me all the bad things, I tell you all the bad things happened in my day. We could do that. I don't know how helpful it's going to be, right? What if we instead, I go to work, you go to school, and we come back and say, did you notice one good thing today? You know, one good thing. Because I know a lot of bad things happen, and you can tell me about those. I just like to hear one good thing, you know, and I'll share my one thing, good thing you. So even like teaming with that about how to take this new way of viewing the year and just kind of opening the hand just a little bit to saying maybe something could change. Maybe this doesn't have to be the same as last year. Because in all reality, it isn't the same as last year because you're a year older. It's a different, you know, all that kind of stuff. There's all types of ways you could point at it. But I just would want to team with the kid to say, let's try to find a glimpse of light in the darkness. See if we can find that.
Exceptions to the rule, so to speak.
Now, I think along that though, Sarah, I would say I think a big part of that is I, as a parent, have to deal with my own fears concerning whether or not I believe it's going to be different. You know,
and I think that's the starting place.
Yeah,
because those kids, they pick up on it, even if we try to hide it. Those our children are so perceptive to our emotions, and if they feel some tension and nerves and anxiety in you, that I don't even think you believe in me.
Yeah,
let alone me believe in myself. So we've got to do some work on ourselves first before we go into that.
Well, and the way the kid sees that and feels that is by your frustrated, irritated, annoyed, angry response. Is why would I be so frustrated, angry, annoyed at the kid being afraid of it if I really believed it was going to go well? You know, when I get frustrated, annoyed, and angry at the kid saying, I think this year's going to suck, and I just get mad, basically the kid gets the underlying message. Like, stop saying that, because I already feel it enough, and I'm already dealing with that myself. And I have a real struggle believing it's going to be successful. I need you to help me believe it's going to be successful, you know? And so I would be curious if I kept getting irritated by them bringing it up, what is causing that irritation and frustration? Is it my own fear that I'm questioning if this is going to be? And I think in most cases, it is. In most cases, I don't see a pathway of how this is going to be. And yet I don't know, we can't switch schools right now. We've already done that too many times, or I don't know how to, you know, fix this stuff with the teachers and the friends. And I just wish it would all change. And it's almost like we're just hoping, you know, that like maybe all those kids who we had problems with are gone this year. Just like and so then we do just kind of almost going in with ignorance and just like not wanting to open our eyes to the fact that there's probably going to be some more challenges, but also being hopeful that we together can change it. It's not hoping that those other kids change or that the school just magically changes, but how can we do that together?
Yeah,
and I think that's the key.
I like that because it's not necessarily a magic wand of, I'm just going to pretend it's all
exactly.
wonderful.
Yes. Yeah.
It's still honest. It's still, okay, we had these struggles, but it's not that fixed mindset of it's a predetermined outcome. And there's this belief that goes with it that we can do hard things. We're capable. We can find pathways. We're not limited. It's not this, well, that's it. We've tried every pathway. There are other avenues. And even if you have a hard teacher, then it's not necessarily the magic wand of get a different teacher. Yep. Maybe sometimes we really do have that teacher and there's nothing we can do about it. So how can we navigate that best?
Now, two key questions I want to hit in wrapping up. Okay, one is kind of easy, and the other one's a little more complicated. So one is, what do I do? I hear this a lot, so do you. What do I do if my kid gets in trouble at school? So let's say the kid does something, especially in middle school, or I guess all ages, and the kid gets in trouble at school, and then the school calls you, and the parents, what do I do? What consequences do I give the kid, right? So if you've been a listener to our podcast, you know we do something different than consequences. So we don't spend a lot. But I would say this, is I try to tell parents, you don't need to double dip. Okay, so don't double dip. The school is running on a list of rules and consequences because it doesn't have relationship to back it up, right? So when the school has quote unquote already been punished for the bad thing they've done, you don't need to compound that too by when they come home. Now here's what we're going to do to you too, right? Is actually when the school does that, allow the school to do their thing. And then your job as a parent is to come alongside that kid, understand how to help them do that thing differently. That's really your whole goal. So you don't need to yell at the kid. You don't need to be all mad at the kid. Sure, you're going to have feelings and you might be disappointed what happened and you can express those, of course. But inevitably, your job is to support them to do it differently. The school's job actually isn't trying to do it differently. The school's job is just saying, you do that again and this is going to happen. There's really no learning that's going on. It's just saying, you do this again, then you're going to get your hand slapped or whatever the thing is. I'm just in that. So with the parents, you don't need to jump on top of it. I would encourage you not to do that, because then the kid's like, goodness sake. So like everybody who finds out about this has to punish me along the way. I thought the school already did the thing. I've already gotten whatever their punishment is. Yeah. I want to come home and just tell you about it. Get your support. Yes.
That's what I think. You want your kid running home to tell you what happened. And you want to hear their perspective, because the school isn't always even in a position to hear their perspective and to know what led to this and this and this.
They typically don't have the time.
Yeah. And so there's a bunch of kids. There's so many things going on.
So many factors.
But at home, you want your child to walk in the door and say, "Mom, I got in trouble." And you want to hear what led to it, even if it's, "I was so mad and I punched him."
Yes.
And that's what you want to hear, because you want to know, the skill of how to regulate yourself, the skill of knowing what to do other than punch the kid.
To deal with conflict resolution. Yeah, all those kind of skills.
And so you want your child to pour it all out and then align with them and help them when they're calm, when they're in a good space. What else could you do? Let me give you these other tools that I have when I'm really frustrated or whatever the situation might be.
Well, the point is, nothing's going to get resolved if everybody's just handing down punishments.
Yeah.
So all you're doing at best is making the kid too scared to ever do that. But he never learned how to do it better. So I agree. I don't know if the school, it'd be great if the school could take the time to work through it, but typically they won't and don't have the time. So they have a book. I don't know if you guys, the listeners know, they have a book and they look at the book and go, what should be done with this offense? Bam. There's no like real individualization for your kid. So when the kid comes home, you want the parent to be able to receive them and be able to understand them and then come alongside them to co-create a different outcome to that situation. Otherwise, you're making it more and more likely that kid will either do that thing again and just get better at hiding it, or the kid just at best doesn't do it because they're too scared, but they never learned how to do it better. Okay, so that's one that I hear a lot. Second one is, what if my kid doesn't want to go to school? Kid chooses not to go to school, and this is one. The earlier you can help the kid with this, the better. I mean, if the kid has been doing this all through elementary school, and it's been a lot of making them go to school, yelling at them with fear and consequences, then the kid buys into this lie that they go to school because they have to. I mean, I've actually counseled kids, Sarah, who are seniors who think they're going to school because if they don't, their parents will get arrested. And that's just not true. And you know what those kids did when they went to school? They just were on their phone the entire time and didn't do school anyway. So they just checked out. Lots of those kids are being made to go to school, quote unquote, just go there, check out, are just failing anyway.
They're just sitting in the building.
So the earlier I can help the kid understand that going to school is their choice. Okay. Now what that looks like is different. So when they're very little, I would suggest a parent, like, whether you go to school or not, that's not necessarily a choice. It's how you go to school. So who you go to school with. You want mom to take you, you want dad to take you. Hey, you want me to hang in there for a little bit? Do you want me to do, whatever. You find different ways for the kid to be able to choose how he goes to school, or what that whole experience is going to be like, what that routine. Typically I find it's not that the kid doesn't want to go to school, it's just the kid doesn't know how to make friends, or the kid doesn't, the kid's had a bad experience with the teacher. There's always something behind it. So it's not that the kid doesn't even know, not going to school, what they'd even do other than play video games. That's all. But they really,
you have the kid at home, I'm bored.
Yes. And the kid wants to learn. You got to trust that kids want to learn. Kids want to be successful. That's why you're sending them to school, because you believe learning is going to help them be able to have more opportunities to then be successful. So they at a young age don't, but if it comes in the middle school, high school years, I really want to go back to what you were saying in the last podcast. I've really got to, if that happened the previous year, we got to set some tone about this new year. Is I don't want it to be this way, right? So some parents have found it very helpful, and I know I did too. I found it helpful when my mom said, hey, listen, if you don't want to go to school, maybe because you didn't do your homework the night before, or maybe because you want to avoid something, just let me know. We're not going to make a habit out of this, okay? So we're not going to keep doing this over and over again. But today, so I remember faking sick sometimes, and then when my mom told me that, I was like, oh, I could just tell you? And so for me, it was like I had a good enough relation with my mom, I would just tell her. And to be honest, I never misused it, right? Now, some kids might, and if they did, I would just go back to rebuilding the connection, rebuilding the relationship, recreating what the vision is for their school, right? Them going to school. You want to hand in hand go with them and do it. So some parents will say, like, you get 5 mental health days this year, right? So that I'm allowing you 5. So make sure you, and lots of times if you just say that real assertively, the kid will buy into that and the kid will pick and choose with, he may not even use all 5 or she may not use all 5. Yeah. But those kind of ways are setting boundaries, not are we going to go to school or not, but this is what it looks like to go to school and still assert your choice when it comes to going to school.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it is that kid, it's the message of this is being done to you and I'm controlling you and no one likes to be controlled, so we want to hand that power back, letting them know they can take a day and not go. They have so many during the year. It's handing it back to them. How you want to go to school is handing it back to them.
Yes.
The power of I'm doing this. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
How am I going to do this?
Yeah.
When power's taken away, you're going to resist. So if it's just you have to go from day one.
Yes.
And we're all going to tell you
we're going to kick you. We're going to bring you, kicking and screaming. The kid will go, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And then, I hate school. I don't want to go. You're going to make me.
And if it's been years of this, that shift will be hard.
Yes. It's a really hard dance to change.
You're going to keep trying to let them know it's different now. And most kids, they know why they're going to school.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully it hasn't gotten to this really bad spot where they just don't even care about any of that now and they've given up. But just really, they know that internally. And if they feel like they have some choice, they're more likely to engage it differently.
All right. So I know we didn't cover everything. I mean, we wanted to get into bullying and being bullied. We didn't even get into all that stuff, right? So we can do that in another podcast. I know there's so many different aspects of school. Maybe we'll do it later in the fall or something like that, right? So we'd love to hear your comments back about this podcast. Maybe ways you help prepare your kids for school. Maybe other questions you have specifically with my experience in the school district, those that we could follow up with and share. But we'd love to hear from any kind of listener feedback. And feel free to go to the podcast. There is some specific courses that could help you too. There's one on how to communicate and understand your teenager. So if there is some school issues going into that, having a lot of conflict with your teenager going into the school year, that could be a fantastic course for you. And another one on how to resolve conflict. So we really enjoy your time. Hope the school year goes fantastic. Really excited about a new year for your kids to learn and grow. And we hope you have a great day.
Thank you for listening.
The Art of Raising Humans podcast should not be considered or used as counseling, but for educational purposes only.